why did you reject Christianity, the interesting thing to me is that I have never one time, honestly, I've never one time had anybody say anything about Darwin and evolution. It's not the problem. The problem is Christians. Christians are forcing people into atheism. And it's fundamentalism. I mean, fundamentalist Christianity. And the thing is that we've frozen ourselves in the Orthodox Church into this kind of Western frame of thought, so that we don't have a vitality and a living expression like we used to have. And you know, when I look at Constantinople, look at somebody like Anna Komnenos, the daughter of Emperor Alexis. She wrote a textbook in astronomy. How many of you ever know that? Her grandmother wrote a text in medicine. And her grandmother also wrote a book about remarkable women. And there were several women scientists in Constantinople. We had 4 emperors who were cosmologists and astronomers in Constantinople. And you know that the First Ecumenical Council mandated a free universal health care system for the empire. So that it would be unchristian not to have one. And consequently, medicine developed very rapidly in the Byzantine Empire. 2 cousins of Apostle Paul, who we call the mothers of modern medicine, who've been forgotten ever since the fall of Constantinople. The first 2 mercenary physicians were Apostle Paul's cousins, Sinais and Philonella, who developed very concrete, modern medical ideas, scientific ideas. Philonella is really the mother of gynecology. You sometimes even see her footnoted in the gynecology textbook. And they developed all kinds of scientific medicine in the whole Byzantine era. There were very, very many working scientists in that era. And somehow their story isn't really remembered. But the other part of it is that a lot of those working scientists were women in the empire. And that's also forgotten. So science and, you know, St. Basil the Great and these others, they never saw a conflict between secular learning and the faith. Just that you should study theology before you studied philosophy, so your theology didn't get corrupted by philosophy. You know, I mean, Plato's a really neat guy, but I mean, it had nothing to do with our theology. And so you had to study, they're part of the great human dialogue, but they have nothing to add to theology. So the fact that science was actually very, very much a part of the society and culture in Byzantium, and the only reason it didn't develop in a more magnificent way was because they were always at war with somebody. And the national treasury was always being emptied and trying to defend themselves against Bulgars and Serbs and Russians and people like that who were constantly attacking the empire. Otherwise, a lot of the Byzantine corpus went to the Arabs. And it was a Byzantine Christian who founded the great medical center at Yondishapur in Persia that became the world center of medical development. But Ibn al-Hussein, who founded it, was an Orthodox Christian, was a Nestorian Christian actually, who came from Constantinople and brought the medical corpus with him. And a lot of the theories in optics and geometry came from the Greek and Egyptian tradition into the Arab tradition. That all of these things were being very well developed at the time, so science was important. And that's why nobody saw a conflict between it at all. That the study of the universe was the unfolding of the knowledge and understanding of God's wonders in creation. But they didn't always match what we thought they were going to match when we got there. And it didn't bother anybody because they had actual faith. See, evolution's not a problem if you have faith. Evolution's a problem if you have an ideology, but not if you have faith. Because when knowledge unfolds before us, we accept it as this is God's method, this is God's way. And we don't accept it as a challenge to an ideology because we have a living faith in the living God who created the heavens and the earth. And we haven't got a clue how he went about doing it. But remember that at the beginning of the creation narrative, it also tells us that all life came out of the sea. First of all, that the Spirit of God hovered over the waters for a long time. And life is drawn forth from the sea. I mean, every one of us here, we're just a sack of seawater. You know, we could say a couple of tablespoons of dirt and seawater. That's what we're made out of. I was on Mount Athos once, and there was a really arrogant Bulgarian fellow with me. I have many stories about him. But one time we went to see we were talking about to one of the older priests at the monastery St. Panteleimon, a Russian monastery. And finally the old man looked at him and said, "Young man, it will pay you to remember you're nothing but a mud pie with a squeak." So this, anyway, does anybody have any questions in the line of what we're actually discussing?
Yes. I was thinking of that work of the great Serb of Montenegro, depending on your politics, but he did write the Serbian grammar. Petar Petrovich Njegoš, who wrote Lucha Mikrokosma, and he talked about those little energies and things like that as a part of our spiritual nature with God. Could you expound on that a little bit?
Well, you know, I can. I mean, it's not fair for everyone, but when we start to talk about how the Apostle Paul used the word energies, and Njegoš as well, because Njegoš was reading in the original, not the English translation. So he knew that Paul mentioned it, and also St. Gregory Palamas mentioned many times the uncreated light and the uncreated energy. So let me give you kind of an example that when we talk about divine grace, we're talking about the energies of God that he communicates to us. That's what grace is. It's the uncreated energy of God that he communicates to us. And in the West, after they lost the context of real theology, they thought that grace was something that was created for the moment, and there were different species of it. And forgot that it was the energy of God with which he communicated to us. And so it became a sort of a magical thing that was dispensed through the 7 sacraments. And you could only come into contact with grace through a sacrament officiated by a priest. The grace wasn't available to the people at large. And because the idea came about that people were all born guilty of Adam's sin, then all humanity was born depraved and evil. So there would be, I can't even remember all the species of grace, but one of them is sort of an arm-twisting grace that sort of pushes you to believe if you're predestined to believe. So there are all these little different species of grace. And the idea, but the whole thing is that when a certain philosopher and priest from the West came to Mount Athos and Thessaloniki in the time of St. Gregory Palamas, he was teaching that you could only know God through types and symbols, but you couldn't have a personal direct knowledge of God or relationship with God, only through types and symbols, only through, say, sacraments or something like that. And Gregory Palamas argued, no, that's not true. You can have a direct, immediate relationship with God through his divine energies. You know, we can't know the essence of God, but we know the energies of God. And if you want to understand the energies a little better, it's the way you interact between yourselves, in a way. I mean, there's an exchange of energy between you when you react. And so that's why somebody will say that person has a negative energy, or that person has a positive energy. That's exactly the truth. So God communicates himself to us through his uncreated energies. And he creates information and knowledge through light, both created and uncreated light. The light is the perfect particle. And everything that we can see is transmitted through light. Everything that we know or the information we take in is somehow connected with light and energy. Now, nobody can tell you exactly what energy is. We have some very great physicists who have reminded us that everything we study is about energy, but we don't know what energy is. And we can't define it exactly. But St. John Damascene gives a nice little definition of energy as well, and the energy with which we communicate with each other. And so energy is really the communicator of our spiritual relationships between us. And it's something that we have to study and learn a little bit to think about exactly what it means. But when Njegoš was writing about it, of course, he understood what he was talking about, the energies that unite us together and bind us together, and the energy that transpires in, say, the Divine Liturgy, and the energy that